She didn't break me. She freed me.
The cockroach staring at me from the bathroom mirror had more dignity than I did at that moment. At least it knew where it belonged. I'm Paul Morrison, 38 years old, and I fix cars for a living in Haven Mills, New York, a town so forgettable that GPS systems apologize when they route you through it. 2 days ago, I was supposed to be enjoying a romantic getaway in Cancun with my wife Rachel. Instead, I'm standing in a roach-infested hotel room that smells like despair and tequila, holding a note that might as well have been my death certificate. Enjoy the adventure, babe. Consider this payback for all those times you embarrassed me. Don't worry, I'll post lots of pics so everyone knows what a good sport you are. XOXO, Rachel. P.S. Your wallet is in the hotel safe. The combination is our anniversary date. If you can remember it. The paper crumpled in my fist like my marriage apparently had months ago without me noticing. Rachel had planned this. Every detail from booking the separate hotel room to timing her disappearance perfectly with my bathroom break at the Cancun airport. She'd boarded an earlier flight while I was washing my hands, probably giggling with that hyena laugh she saved for her most cruel moments. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, sent from what looked like LAX airport. OMG, Paul, you should see your face right now. I'm posting this on Instagram. Prank wars and how about marriage goals? I'm sorry, not sorry. Attached was a video she'd secretly recorded of me frantically searching the terminal, calling her name like a lost child. In the background, I could hear her stifled laughter. She'd filmed my humiliation and was now broadcasting it to our friend's family and her coworkers. I opened Instagram. The video already had 47 likes and counting. The comments were brutal. OMG, Rachel, this is hilarious. Poor Paul, LOL, but he had it coming. Relationship goals, TBH. Your husband looks so confused. My hands shook as I scrolled through more comments, each one a small knife twisted in my gut. These were people I'd known for years. People I'd helped move apartments, lent money to, invited to barbecues. Now they were laughing at my expense like I was some reality TV show designed for their entertainment. I tried calling Rachel. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. The messages showed as delivered but unread. She was ignoring me, while simultaneously destroying my reputation one social media post at a time. The hotel room felt like it was shrinking. The walls were painted that particular shade of yellow that exists only in places where hope goes to die. The air conditioner wheezed like an old man climbing stairs, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear what sounded like a mariachi band having a nervous breakdown. I walked to the window and looked out at paradise. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, couples walked hand in hand along pristine beaches, and somewhere out there, my wife was probably already planning her next humiliation. This wasn't a prank. This was warfare, and I just realized I'd been fighting with a water pistol while she'd been stockpiling nuclear tools. The hotel safe sat in the corner like a metal middle finger. Our anniversary date. June 15th, 2008. 15 years of marriage. And she was using it as the punchline to her elaborate joke. I punched in the numbers. 06, 15, 08, nothing. I tried different combinations. 6 to 15, 08. 6, 1, 5, 0, 8, 15, 7, 0, still nothing. That's when it hit me. She probably didn't even remember our real anniversary. Rachel had always been terrible with dates. She probably Googled it or checked Facebook to get the combination, and knowing her, she'd gotten it wrong. I tried her birthday. The safe opened. Inside was my wallet, but my credit cards were missing. In their place was another note. Oops, looks like I forgot to mention I canceled the cards. Don't want you going on a spending spree. There's about $40 in cash. Should be enough for a bus ticket to the airport. Love you, mean it. $40 in Mexico. With no credit cards, no return ticket, and a wife who'd just declared war on my existence. I sat on the bed and laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. And I'd done enough of that for Rachel's entertainment already. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Rachel. It was Susan Martinez, my best friend since high school and the only decent cop left in Haven Mills. She was also, coincidentally, vacationing in Mexico for some private investigator conference. Paul, saw Rachel's post. Where the heck are you? I'd never been happier to see someone's name on my phone screen. Susan found me 3 hours later at a beach bar called El Corazón Roto, the Broken Heart. The irony wasn't lost on me, especially since I was nursing my third beer with my last $20 while watching the sunset paint the sky the same color as my mood, angry red fading to bitter purple. "You look like heck," Susan said, sliding into the plastic chair across from me. At 34, she still had the build of the college softball player she'd been, all lean muscle and controlled energy. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the kind of expression that suggested someone was about to have a very bad day. "Feel worse," I replied, raising my bottle in a mock toast. "To Rachel Morrison, the woman who turned humiliation into an art form." Susan ordered a beer and studied me with those sharp cop eyes that missed nothing. I saw the video, and the comments, and the follow-up posts. There were follow-up posts? She pulled out her phone. "Rachel's been busy, look." The screen showed Rachel's Instagram story. Photo after photo of her looking radiant at LAX, then on the plane, then arriving in New York. Each image had a caption. "Flying solo. Sometimes a girl needs her space. Home sweet home. Paul's still figuring out his travel arrangements, lol. Girls' night out tonight. Freedom feels amazing." The final photo showed Rachel at Murphy's Pub in Haven Mills, our local hangout, surrounded by friends, holding up a martini glass with a huge smile. The caption read, "To new beginnings. Some people need to learn that actions have consequences. Living my best life, no regrets." She's celebrating, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "She's making a statement," Susan corrected. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the bar behind us. A drunk American tourist was arguing with the bartender about his bill, his voice getting louder and more aggressive with each exchange. The bartender, a patient-looking man in his 50s, was trying to explain something in broken English, while the tourist waved his arms and shouted about being ripped off. "These people are all thieves," the tourist slurred, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Typical Mexican BS." The temperature in the bar seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversation stopped. The mariachi music from the speakers felt suddenly inappropriate. "Hey," I called out to the tourist, "maybe dial it back a notch." The man turned toward me, swaying slightly. He was about my age, soft around the middle, wearing a Hawaiian shirt that had seen better decades. His face was sunburned and twisted with the kind of entitled rage that comes from never being told no. "Mind your own business, pal," he snarled. "Unless you want to defend these criminals, too." Something snapped inside me. Maybe it was the beer, maybe it was the accumulated humiliation of the day, or maybe it was just the sight of another entitled person treating decent people like garbage. But I stood up, and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt like myself again. "Apologize to the man," I said quietly. "Or what?" I walked over to him slowly, deliberately. "Or I'll help you find your manners." The tourist laughed and took a swing at me. Big mistake. I'd spent 4 years in the Marines before becoming a mechanic, and 15 years working on cars had kept my hands strong and my reflexes sharp. I caught his punch, twisted his arm behind his back, and walked him toward the door while he yelped like a stepped-on chihuahua. "You're going to apologize to the bartender," I said calmly. "Then you're going to pay your bill and leave quietly. Are we clear?" He nodded frantically. I released him, and he stumbled back to the bar, mumbled an apology, threw some money down, and scurried out like the coward he was. The bar erupted in applause. The bartender, whose name was Carlos, refused to let me pay for another drink. Other patrons bought me beers and clapped me on the back. For the first time since Rachel had abandoned me, I felt like a human being instead of a punchline. "Nice work," Susan said when I returned to our table. "Feel better?" Actually, yeah. I did feel better. Standing up to that jerk had reminded me of something important. I wasn't helpless. I'd just been caught off guard. "Good, because we need to talk about what happens when you get home." "What do you mean?" Susan leaned forward, her voice dropping to a professional whisper. "Paul, I've been a cop for 12 years and a private investigator for 3. What Rachel did isn't just cruel, it's calculated. People don't plan elaborate humiliations like this unless they're building up to something bigger. Like what? Like divorce proceedings, where she gets to play the victim. Think about it. She's already established a narrative on social media where you're the bumbling husband who deserves to be pranked. She's positioning herself as the fun, spontaneous wife who's finally breaking free from your boring influence. The beer in my stomach turned to ice water. You think she's planning to leave me? I think she's planning to destroy you, Susan said bluntly. And I think this Mexico thing was just the opening move. My phone buzzed. Another Instagram notification. Rachel had posted a new photo. Her and her sister Brenda at some upscale restaurant, both of them laughing hysterically. The caption read, "When your sister helps you realize you deserve so much better. Here's to women supporting women. Hashtag sister love, know your worth. Bye, Felicia." Brenda, of course. Rachel's older sister, the one who'd never liked me, never thought I was good enough for her precious baby sister. The one who'd been poisoning Rachel against me since day one of our relationship. "Susan," I said slowly, "I think I'm going to need that help getting home, and then I'm going to need help with something else." "What's that?" I looked at the photo of Rachel and Brenda celebrating what was clearly my downfall, and something cold and calculating settled in my chest. "I'm going to need help reminding my wife that actions have consequences." The flight back to New York gave me 18 hours to think, which turned out to be exactly 18 hours too many. Susan had used her connections to get me on a red-eye flight, and as I sat in the cramped middle seat between a snoring businessman and a woman who apparently bathed in perfume, I had nothing to do but replay the last 2 days over and over in my mind. By the time we landed at JFK, I'd reached some conclusions. First, Rachel's prank had been too elaborate, too well planned to be spontaneous. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, maybe months. Second, the social media campaign wasn't random cruelty, it was strategic character assassination. And third, my wife of 15 years had just declared war on me, and I'd been too stupid to see it coming. Susan met me at baggage claim, looking like she'd been up all night, which she probably had. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Define bad," she replied, handing me a coffee that tasted like salvation. The video has been shared 437 times. It's been picked up by 3 of those viral content pages. Someone made a meme out of your face, and Rachel's been giving interviews. Local news picked it up. Human interest story about a wife's harmless prank that brought some joy to people's day. She was on Channel 8 this morning, talking about how important it is for couples to keep things fun and spontaneous. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, then 20. Then I gave up counting and just focused on not screaming in the middle of the airport. "There's more," Susan continued. "I drove by your house this morning. There's a U-Haul in the driveway." The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. She's moving out, or moving someone in. Either way, you need to get home and figure out what's happening before she changes the locks. The drive from JFK to Haven Mills takes about 4 hours on a good day. This wasn't a good day. Traffic was brutal, my head was pounding, and every mile brought me closer to a confrontation I wasn't ready for. Susan drove while I stared out the window at the familiar landscape of upstate New York rolling by, strip malls and gas stations giving way to small towns and farmland, then finally to the decaying industrial remnants that marked the approach to Haven Mills. Haven Mills had been a manufacturing town once, back when America still made things. Now it was the kind of place where young people left as soon as they could afford to, and old people stayed because they couldn't afford not to. The abandoned factories along the river stood like tombstones for better times, their broken windows reflecting nothing but empty sky. Our house sat on Maple Street, a dead-end road lined with 2-story homes that had seen better decades. I'd bought the place 12 years ago when I still believed in things like stability and forever. It needed work then, and it needed work now, but it was ours. Or it had been. The U-Haul was parked in our driveway like a metal middle finger. Rachel's Honda was there too, along with a silver BMW I didn't recognize. As Susan pulled up to the curb, I could see people moving around inside the house through the windows. "You want me to come in with you?" Susan asked. "No. This is something I need to handle myself. Paul, if she's trying to clean you out, then I'll deal with it, but I need to see this with my own eyes first." I walked up the front steps I'd repaired 3 times in the last 5 years and used my key to open the door I'd painted last spring. The sound of laughter and conversation drifted from the kitchen, along with the smell of expensive coffee and what sounded like a celebration. I followed the voices and found them. Rachel, her sister Brenda, and 2 other women I recognized as Rachel's co-workers from the law firm where she worked as a paralegal. They were sitting around our kitchen table, surrounded by boxes and packing materials, drinking coffee from our wedding china and laughing like they were at a party. Rachel saw me first. Her smile faltered for just a moment, then returned full force. Paul, you made it home. How was your adventure? The other women turned to look at me, and I could see the barely contained amusement in their faces. I was the entertainment, the punchline they'd all been waiting to see. Hello, Rachel, I said quietly. Ladies. Brenda stood up, all 5 feet and 2 inches of her, radiating the kind of self-righteous indignation that had made her insufferable since the day I'd met her. At 41, she was 3 years older than Rachel and had never let either of us forget it. She worked as an office manager for a dental practice and acted like she was running Goldman Sachs. Well, Brenda said, crossing her arms. Look what the cat dragged in. Did you learn your lesson about treating my sister with respect? I'm sorry, what lesson was that exactly? Don't play dumb, Paul. Rachel told us all about how you've been taking her for granted, embarrassing her in front of her friends, making her feel small. She finally stood up for herself. And good for her. I looked at Rachel, who was studying her coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe. Is that what happened, Rachel? I was taking you for granted. Paul, don't make this harder than it needs to be, Rachel said without looking up. We both know this marriage hasn't been working for a long time. Funny, I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I didn't realize you'd decided it was over. One of the co-workers, Jennifer, I think her name was, spoke up. Rachel deserves to be happy, Paul. You can't expect her to stay in a relationship that's not fulfilling her needs. And what needs are those, exactly? Emotional support, Brenda said like she was reading from a script. Intellectual stimulation, romance, adventure. All the things you stopped providing years ago. I walked over to the counter and poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot they'd made with my coffee maker in my kitchen. The simple act gave me a moment to think, to process what was really happening here. This wasn't a separation, it was an intervention. They'd turned my homecoming into a group therapy session where I was the identified patient, and they were the concerned family members helping Rachel break free from my toxic influence. So let me get this straight, I said, turning back to face them. Rachel abandons me in a foreign country, humiliates me on social media, and now I'm supposed to accept that it was all for my own good? That I somehow deserved it? You embarrassed her at Mike and Sandra's wedding, Rachel said suddenly, finally looking at me. Dancing with that young waitress, making jokes about my dress, ignoring me all night. How do you think that made me feel? I stared at her. Rachel, that was 6 months ago. The waitress was Mike's niece. She was 19 years old. And I danced with her for one song because she was standing by herself looking miserable. And I complimented your dress 3 times that night. That's not how I remember it. And that's not how anyone else remembers it either. But apparently, we're rewriting history now. Brenda stood up again, her face flushed with righteous anger. This is exactly what Rachel's talking about, Paul. You gaslight her. You minimize her feelings. You make everything about you. I make everything about me? I'm not the one who planned an elaborate public humiliation and then invited my friends over to celebrate it. It was a harmless prank. It was psychological warfare. The room fell silent. The 4 women stared at me like I'd just proven their point about my unreasonable nature. Rachel sighed dramatically. I think you should stay somewhere else tonight, Paul. Maybe at Susan's place. Give us both some space to figure things out. Us both? Rachel, you figured things out weeks ago when you planned this whole thing. The only person who needs to figure anything out is me. I set my coffee cup down on the counter and looked around the kitchen one more time. These women had turned my home into a war room, and I was the enemy they were strategizing against. I'll pack a bag, I said. But Rachel, this isn't over, not by a long shot. As I walked toward the stairs, I heard Brenda say, See, I told you he'd be like this. Some men just can't handle strong women. I stopped at the bottom of the staircase and turned back. Brenda, I've handled your sister's strength for 15 years. What I can't handle is her cruelty. There's a difference, but I don't expect you to understand it. I went upstairs to pack, leaving them to their victory celebration. But as I threw clothes into a duffel bag, I could hear them talking in hushed, excited voices, and I realized something important. They thought they'd won. They had no idea the game was just getting started. Susan's apartment was a study in controlled chaos. Police academy certificates hung next to private investigator licenses. Case files were stacked on every available surface, and her coffee table was covered with surveillance equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. She'd cleared space on her couch for me to sleep, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. Tell me about Chad, I said, accepting another cup of coffee that was strong enough to wake the dead. Susan looked up from her laptop, where she'd been researching something for the last hour. Chad Morrison? Wait, he's not related to you, is he? Different Morrison. Chad Morrison owns Morrison Development, that company that's been buying up properties along the river. Rachel mentioned him a few times, said he was some big-shot entrepreneur who was going to revitalize Haven Mills. Ah, that Chad Morrison. Susan's expression darkened. Yeah, I know him. Flashy guy, drives expensive cars, always talking about his big plans for the town. Word is, he's got money, but nobody knows where it came from. He showed up here about 2 years ago and started throwing cash around like he was Elon Musk. Why do you ask? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Rachel had been posting throughout the day. In the background of one of them, a selfie taken at some upscale restaurant, I'd spotted a familiar figure. Is that him? I asked, pointing to a man in an expensive suit who was sitting at a table behind Rachel and Brenda. Susan squinted at the screen, then pulled out a magnifying glass from her desk drawer. Well, I'll be shocked. That's definitely Chad Morrison. And look at this. He's not looking at his own table. He's looking at Rachel. We spent the next few minutes going through Rachel's recent posts with new eyes. Once you knew what to look for, the signs were obvious. Chad appeared in the background of 3 different photos over the past month. In one, he was clearly walking toward Rachel's table. In another, he was standing by the bar where she was ordering drinks. In the third, they were both visible in the reflection of a restaurant window. And they were definitely talking to each other. How long do you think this has been going on? I asked. Hard to say. But Paul, if Rachel's involved with Chad Morrison, this situation just got a lot more complicated. What do you mean? Susan closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. Chad Morrison isn't just some rich guy with questionable taste in cars. He's connected. I've been watching him for months as part of an insurance fraud investigation, and the man has his fingers in a lot of pies. Some of them legitimate, some of them questionable. What kind of questionable? The kind where people who ask too many questions tend to find themselves with legal problems. Nothing I can prove yet, but there are rumors about his business practices. Let's just say he's not the kind of guy you want to cross. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You think Rachel knows what she's gotten herself into? I think Rachel's gotten herself involved with someone who makes you look like a Boy Scout, and she has no idea what league she's playing in now. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Hey, Paul, it's Jennifer from Rachel's office. Can we talk? There are some things you should know. I showed the message to Susan, who raised an eyebrow. Jennifer was one of the women at your house today, right? Yeah, one of Rachel's coworkers. Why would she want to talk to me? Only one way to find out. I texted back, sure, when and where. The response came immediately. Tonight, Murphy's Pub, 9 p.m., come alone. Susan looked at her watch. That's in 2 hours. You want me to run surveillance? No, I think I need to handle this one myself. But Susan, if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. But Paul, be careful. If Rachel's mixed up with Chad Morrison, then everyone around her is potentially dangerous. That includes her coworkers. I spent the next 2 hours thinking about what Jennifer might want to tell me. She'd seemed friendly enough at the house, but she'd also been part of the group celebrating Rachel's victory over me. Why would she want to help me now? Murphy's Pub was Haven Mills' attempt at an Irish bar, complete with fake shamrocks and Guinness signs that had been there since the Clinton administration. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody else's business, which made it either the perfect place for a secret meeting or the worst possible choice. Jennifer was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a half-empty glass of wine and a nervous expression. She was younger than Rachel, maybe 28, with blonde hair and the kind of earnest face that suggested she still believed the world was fundamentally fair. Paul, thanks for coming, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. Thanks for reaching out. I have to admit, I'm curious about what you want to tell me. Jennifer glanced around the bar, then leaned forward and lowered her voice. What happened today at your house? That wasn't right. I mean, the Mexico thing was bad enough, but turning your homecoming into some kind of celebration? That was cruel. Then why were you there? Because Rachel asked me to be there for moral support. She said you might get violent, that she needed witnesses in case you tried to hurt her. I stared at her. She said I might get violent? Jennifer, I've never laid a hand on Rachel in 15 years of marriage. I've never even raised my voice to her. I know, that's why I'm here. Jennifer took a sip of wine, then continued. Paul, Rachel's been telling stories about you at work for months. Stories that don't match the man I met today. What kind of stories? She said you were controlling, that you monitored her phone calls and checked her emails. She said you got jealous when other men talked to her, that you'd embarrass her in public by making scenes. She said you'd been emotionally harmful for years and she was finally ready to leave you. Each word hit me like a physical blow. And you believed her? We all believed her. Why wouldn't we? But Paul, the man she described and the man I met today are two completely different people. You were calm, reasonable, even polite under circumstances that would have made most people lose their minds. So what changed your mind? Jennifer hesitated, then pulled out her phone. This did. She showed me a text conversation between her and Rachel from earlier that evening. Jennifer, I feel bad about today. Paul seemed really hurt. Rachel, don't feel bad. He's just good at playing the victim. You should see how he acts when we're alone. Jennifer, still, maybe we went too far with the celebration thing. Rachel, Jen, I need you on my side here. Paul's going to try to turn people against me. He's manipulative like that. Jennifer, I'm on your side. I just think maybe, Rachel, maybe what? Maybe I should have stayed in a loveless marriage with a man who doesn't appreciate me. Maybe I should have kept letting him hold me back from living my life. Jennifer, of course not, but Rachel, but nothing. I'm finally free, and I'm not going to apologize for being happy about it. I read the conversation twice, trying to process what I was seeing. The Rachel in these texts was cold, calculating, and completely different from the woman I'd married. There's more, Jennifer said quietly. Rachel's been getting phone calls at work, personal calls during business hours. She takes them in the conference room and closes the door. Yesterday I walked by and heard her laughing, saying things like, he has no idea and this is going to be so perfect. You think she was talking to Chad Morrison? Jennifer's eyes widened. You know about Chad? I'm learning about Chad. What do you know? He came by the office last week, said he was interested in hiring the firm for some real estate work. But Paul, he wasn't there to talk to the lawyers. He spent the whole time talking to Rachel, and the way they looked at each other, she trailed off. How long do you think it's been going on? I don't know for sure, but Rachel's been different for the past few months. New clothes, new hairstyle, staying late at work, going out for drinks with clients. We all thought she was just going through a phase, trying to spice up her life. Now I think she was planning her exit strategy. I leaned back in the booth, trying to process everything Jennifer had told me. Rachel hadn't just decided to leave me. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation while building a case for herself as the wronged wife who deserved better. Jennifer, why are you telling me this? Because it's not right. Because I have a husband too. And if someone was planning to destroy his life, I'd want him to know about it. She paused, then added, and because I think Rachel's in over her head with Chad Morrison. That man has a reputation, Paul. Not a good one. What kind of reputation? The kind where his business partners have a tendency to end up bankrupt or in legal trouble. The kind where women who get involved with him find themselves in situations they can't get out of easily. Jennifer finished her wine and stood up. I have to go, but Paul, be careful, and whatever you're planning to do about this situation, do it fast. Because I think Rachel and Chad are planning something big, and I don't think it's going to end well for anyone involved. She left me sitting in the booth with more questions than answers and a growing certainty that my marriage hadn't just ended, it had been destroyed, and I was about to find out who was holding the smoking tool. The next morning brought the kind of gray, drizzling weather that made Haven Mills look like a town where hope went to die. I was sitting in Susan's kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold while I tried to make sense of everything Jennifer had told me, when my phone rang. It was Mia, my 16-year-old daughter. Dad, can you come pick me up from school? I'm sick. Mia lived with her mother, my ex-wife from my first marriage, in Albany, but she spent weekends with Rachel and me, or she had back when I had a home to bring her to. What's wrong, sweetheart? Do you have a fever? No, Dad, I'm not actually sick. I need to talk to you, and I can't do it over the phone. There was something in her voice, a tension that made my parental alarm bells start ringing. I'll be there in an hour. The drive to Albany gave me time to think about how I was going to explain the situation to Mia. She'd always gotten along well with Rachel, and I'd tried to keep my relationship problems from affecting my relationship with my daughter. But if Rachel was really planning to destroy me, Mia needed to know what was happening. I found her waiting in the school parking lot, looking older than her 16 years, and wearing an expression that reminded me uncomfortably of myself. "Thanks for coming," she said, getting into the car. "Can we go somewhere private? Like, really private?" We drove to Thatcher State Park, a place we'd been coming to since Mia was little. The overlook gave us a view of the Hudson Valley that stretched for miles, and on a clear day, you could see all the way to Massachusetts. Today, the view was shrouded in mist, but it was still beautiful in a melancholy way. "Dad," Mia said after we'd been sitting in silence for a few minutes, "I saw the video." My heart sank. "Mia, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything. I know Rachel, remember? I've been watching her manipulate people since I was 12 years old." I turned to look at my daughter, really look at her, and realized she wasn't a little girl anymore. She was 16, smart, and apparently more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. "What do you mean?" "Dad, Rachel's been planning this for months, maybe longer. She's been asking me questions about you, about your habits, about things that made you angry or embarrassed. I thought she was just trying to be a better stepmom, but now I realize she was gathering intelligence." "What kind of questions? Like, what were your biggest fears? What would hurt you the most?" "She asked me about your time in the Marines, about why your first marriage ended, about your relationship with your parents. She said she wanted to understand you better, but Dad, the way she asked the questions, it felt wrong." I felt sick. "Mia, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought I was being paranoid, and because you seemed happy with her, and I didn't want to ruin that for you." "But Dad, after what she did in Mexico, I started putting pieces together." Mia pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text conversation. "She's been texting me, trying to get me to take her side. Look at this." The conversation was from the day before. "Rachel, hi, sweetie. I hope you're not too upset about the Mexico thing. It was just a harmless prank." Mia, "It seemed pretty mean, Rachel." Rachel, "Your dad needed a reality check. He's been taking me for granted for years. Sometimes you have to shake things up to save a relationship." Mia, "Are you guys getting divorced?" Rachel, "That depends on whether your dad can learn to treat me with the respect I deserve. But don't worry, sweetie. No matter what happens between us, I'll always care about you." Mia, "This feels really manipulative, Rachel." Rachel, "I'm sorry you feel that way. Maybe when you're older, you'll understand how complicated adult relationships can be." I read the conversation twice, feeling my anger build with each exchange. Rachel was trying to manipulate my daughter, trying to turn her against me, or at least make her complicit in whatever game Rachel was playing. "There's more," Mia said quietly. "Dad, I think Rachel's been cheating on you." "What makes you say that?" "Last month, when I was staying at your house for the weekend, Rachel got a phone call late at night. She thought I was asleep, but I heard her talking to someone. She was whispering, but I could hear enough to know it wasn't a conversation she should have been having with another man." "What did she say?" "She said things like, 'I can't wait to be with you,' and 'this is so much harder than I thought it would be,' and 'he's starting to suspect something.' Dad, she was planning to leave you even then." I stared out at the misty valley, trying to process the fact that my 16-year-old daughter had figured out what I'd been too blind to see. "Mia, I'm sorry you got caught up in this. None of this is your fault." "I know it's not my fault, Dad, but I feel guilty anyway. I should have warned you. You were trying to protect my feelings. I understand that." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the mist roll across the hills. Finally, Mia spoke again. "Dad, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But Mia, I need you to promise me something. Stay out of this from now on. Don't respond to Rachel's texts. Don't take sides. Don't get involved in whatever's about to happen." "What's about to happen?" I looked at my daughter, this smart, perceptive young woman who'd been trying to protect me from a truth I wasn't ready to face, and made a decision. "I'm going to remind Rachel that actions have consequences." "Dad, that sounds ominous." "It's supposed to." I drove Mia back to school, then headed home to Haven Mills with a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Rachel hadn't just decided to leave me. She'd been planning a campaign of psychological warfare designed to destroy me completely. She'd enlisted my own daughter in her intelligence gathering, tried to turn Mia against me, and was now celebrating her victory with her friends and her new boyfriend. But Rachel had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. She thought she was dealing with the same Paul Morrison who'd spent 15 years trying to make her happy, who'd swallowed his pride and ignored the warning signs and pretended everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She had no idea she'd just declared war on a man who had nothing left to lose. By the time I got back to Haven Mills, I'd made several decisions. First, I was going to find out everything I could about Chad Morrison and his relationship with my wife. Second, I was going to document every lie Rachel had told and every manipulation she'd attempted. And third, I was going to make sure that when this was all over, everyone would know exactly who Rachel Morrison really was. I called Susan from the parking lot of Murphy's Pub. "I need your help," I said when she answered. "What kind of help?" "The kind that's going to require all of your investigative skills and probably some equipment that's not entirely legal." "Paul, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to give Rachel exactly what she deserves." There was a pause. Then Susan's voice came back, careful and professional. "Paul, I can't be involved in anything illegal. I'm not planning anything illegal. I'm planning something much worse than that." "What's worse than illegal?" "The truth."